Good morning. I was just checking to see the microphone's on, and it seems to be working. My name is Ulrich Seldeslachts. I'm hosting your next panel. Anybody here from law enforcement? Okay. If you want to be in the law enforcement panel, then you need to be in the other side. So this is the panel specifically on cyber forensic readiness. So all of you that made that decision, you made a very fine decision. This panel, I'm very lucky to be hosting with 3 experts on this topic, both cybersecurity experts as well as people who have been working in the field for many years and who can also talk with experience on cyber forensics. When we started preparing for this panel, I specifically asked the panelists to think a little bit in advance on 3 main considerations for cyber forensic readiness, for you to make sure that you have at least 9 or maybe even 12 key messages to take along, because there are so many things that we can say on this topic. So in any case, a couple of main considerations for you to take along. And also, at the conclusion, I'll be asking them for 2 very practical actions for you to take when you get back home to your desk tomorrow, or maybe even tonight at the company, that you know exactly what you need to do to be cyber forensic prepared. So, cyber forensic. Cyber forensic is actually 2 words. It means and it involves the cyber part. So what do you expect cyber forensic readiness? It actually means that you've had an issue, that there has been an incident. It means that you might have been under attack, somebody might have stolen your data or something of a kind. So what do? First thing that you do, don't panic. Keep calm and especially don't touch. Don't touch whatever the device is, whatever the situation is that you have there. Try to get some professional advice from experts that are working together with you or near you. If you think you're an expert, don't touch it here, because then you need to know that you'll have a second opinion and somebody next to you who might also be able to guide you and to help you also collecting the evidence. Because that's actually what it comes down to. It's really about collecting evidence. Evidence in this case, it's about electronic evidence, digital evidence. And that's not the same like any other types of evidence. It's not like a piece of paper. It's not like a machine that you can see somebody else stealing and walking outside of the door and that you have video surveillance on this. No, it's something else. So there's a number of tools for this. This kit that I'm showing you here is the tool that you can actually use to help you collecting that evidence. It's a tool that actually will replicate an image of what the situation is at that point in time. So it's really a forensic tool that helps you through that process. And definitely one of the advices is make sure that you have something like this very nearby to you for just in the case that it happens. Cyber forensic also means readiness. Be firstly mentally prepared. What does that mean, mentally prepared? Well, it's about a couple of times we've heard this mentioning by Ronald earlier this morning, but also yesterday by Jamie from NATO. It's about concept of active defense. So think ahead in advance, because really those attackers are there to steal data from you or to harm you and harm the company. And these attacks are not as simple and are taking place on a constant rate and are just increasing in speed and also in variety and in variability. So it's really on a constant pace, and you can see here a couple of indications. This is just a snapshot of the number of DDoS attacks that are happening on a day-to-day basis. And there's different versions of this picture that you can find online. This is one from Arbor Networks that we've integrated in one of our sites, botvrij.be. So specifically there, you can see that there's actually a lot of activity happening on a constant basis. It means also be mentally prepared that you need to be staying informed. The fact that you're here today and yesterday makes you already a little bit more informed and aware. But there's many different other means and ways to inform you. There's different websites like the Botfair, the BC Center website, also collecting a lots of data and information. We are organizing as LSEC different types of events and activities. We had an interesting panel a couple of months ago on forensics, also together with Fox IT and also with one of the panelists here, Luc. So there's a lot of data and information that you can definitely find. Another one to be mentally prepared about is be decisive. And you can either choose to be picking up your umbrella and just say, okay, I don't want to know, just put it under the carpet. Or you can take the steering wheel and you can decide, I'm going to steer my company and this incident into the right direction. So be decisive. Readiness also means be operationally prepared. So next to the mindset, there's also the operations, of course. And one of the things there is make sure that you have an incident management team. Make sure that you have people that you know that you can reach out to. And I'm sure that we'll be talking about this also during the panel. Who are these people? Which people do you have to have in there? And also how can you make them prepared? So make sure that you have this team of people in case that you have an incident that can work together with you in making sure that you collect the necessary data. And make sure that you have also a black book. This black book is not to write your expenses down. It's not to write the names of your mistresses or friends and relatives. No, it's specifically intended to serve as a guide for you, a short contact list for those experts that you really need very close to you in case something happens. And you've seen a number of those experts already today, Fox IT, Deloitte, and many other companies and people that can help you through this process. Make also sure that you can provide those people with a sensible amount of data. And there's different types of data that you should think of providing to them. But in any case, make sure that you are ready to be able to do that. Be alert is another one. It takes time before you detect that an incident actually happens. Even if you have all of the necessary tools in place, it could take at least still 25 hours and highly likely even longer to detect that something has been there. So be alert. Make sure that you are monitoring, that you ask the right questions also to your systems. And also consider the fact that you have to be acting very fast. Usually, the time before you detect something and before you're capable of mitigating that act takes some time. So the attacker has free time. And that free time is depending really on a situation-by-situation basis. But there again, people can help you and guiding through that process. But also do understand and also inform your colleagues and your management about the fact that such an incident is also going to cost you. There are some companies, like in this case in Perva, that have been calculating the cost of an attack, of an incident. And typically it takes somewhere between 4 to 6 hours, in this case, to try to evolve out of a DDoS attack. And then there's differences in, of course, in the size and magnitude of those types of attacks. And they cost somewhere on average between 5,000 and up to more than 100,000 euros, or dollars in this case as well. So there's also a cost related, of course, to these things. And then a final clear message here is also be mentally prepared to share what you find, to collect the data, to make sure that you collect this data in a sincere way, but also to share the information that you find, because you will be able to help others with it, and you also will be able to learn from those attacks into potentially further along. So sharing intelligence is already what has been mentioned this morning. It's information sharing. There's different platforms, have different mechanisms. I'm not going to go into detail. Just to let you know, like was also mentioned by Benoit this morning, there's many different instances and organizations already doing this. There's many different technologies to be able to do this. We are using sticks. And if you don't yet do it today, then it might be very likely, if you're in the critical infrastructure environment, depending on which country that you are, it's different. You will be even required to provide that data and to provide intelligence on breaches. Just to guide you a little bit further in this, you won't be the only one who's trying to do this. There's the ISAC models that are existing, for instance, in the Netherlands and in the US. Yesterday was John Salmer from the FS-ISACs who has been explaining a little bit about the concept of the ISACs. We are also trying to start different ISACs here in Belgium, but we are also participating in what's called the Club R2GS, which is actually collecting different SOC operators and SIEM operators and working towards an ETSI standard of collecting intelligence and data. And so we started with the Belgian version of the club, where we have different intelligent people and people from the operations knowing how to share data. So after those sort of introductions, I'll leave it now up to the panel. Now you know what it is that we're going to talk about. Allow me to introduce you from here to my closest left, Jaya Baloo from KPN. She's been the CISO within KPN for the last couple of years and been very active in the domain of security, also very prepared and supportive of participating in these types of conferences and also sharing her expertise. Jaya, before that, used to be also part of Verizon, where she basically learned also the hard way in how hackers are working and also into the nitty-gritty details of installing different networks. And today, experience it in the hard way from within KPN. Also interesting, at least from our previous discussion a couple of months ago, KPN has decided to support and to put into the market something like the Black Phone, a very much privacy-enabled phone. And so we'll be very interested in hearing about some of your experiences and your views in terms of cyber forensic readiness. Jaya, I'll leave the floor to you.
Thank you. Good morning. I just had a really nice cup of coffee at Fox IT, so I'm a bit more awake than I was a few hours ago. But bear with me, because I tend to speak too fast, so if I am doing that, just let me know. So really, I come from KPN. It's a very big company. It has over 20,000 employees, and for Dutch standards, that's very, very large. We have over 1 million internal IP addresses, and we're the largest IP holder in the Netherlands of public IP ranges. So we have a lot of stuff that needs to be protected on a daily basis and is attacked regularly. So, I think most of you are aware of the adagium. It's not a matter of if, but a matter of when a company will be attacked, and that taking that understanding is part of the mature attitude to dealing with cybersecurity and with readiness. But unfortunately, KPN didn't have that attitude about 2.5 years ago, and they didn't know that they could be hacked or would be hacked, and they were hacked by a 17-year-old child. And it was a child who really was just playing, trying to see how far he could get, and he got pretty far. That's what I have to thank my job for, so yay, hackers! But I think what it really shows us is just how vulnerable a company that does have resources, that is very large, that is a target, and didn't necessarily realize it is. It boils down to 3 items. It took the objective from Luke very literally. So what I think pretty much every single company needs are 3 fundamental things, and they were missing, at least to their entirety at KPN at the time. First one is security awareness, which means, why should you do something? What's required for this culture change? And the second thing is actually understanding what your threats are at every time and realizing which one is more important than the other one. So visibility and risk intelligence are vital in order to make decisions, not just spending decisions, but also doing basic triage. And finally, if you know why you should be doing something, and you can actually see what the issues are, then you need the capability to be able to act on it. And that last bit is part of the incident response, but part of forensics, et cetera. And all 3 bits of this puzzle, I think, are vital in order to actually being able to solve the problem. So when I speak to board-level management, I try to couch it not in technical terms, but in these 3 areas, because it's simple to understand, it's a consistent message, and it makes it easy for me to get budget or resources or whatever to get something done. One of the first things that KPN had invested in was a security operations center. The way that they had done it, though, is that it was basically built out of our network operations center. Network operations centers are things that telcos understand. They understand the need to have service quality. So having a NOC is part and parcel of their daily business. But making a SOC is different. It has different kinds of people in it. You need a different attitude. You don't have to sit and wait for an alarm to come by. You need to be able to go proactively hunting and gathering for issues. So that SOC ability and that SOC mentality is not something that is necessarily part of a telecommunications or otherwise network-oriented company, which you would think would be technical, advanced, and it's not necessarily so when it comes to the area of security. So you really need a different type of mentality, and one of the first things that we instated was not just a defense team, but an offense team. So when we were looking at how to shape this organization, it shouldn't just be about reactive detection, but proactive. So we built out a red team that was there to go, it's a group of ethical hackers to go and hunt for vulnerabilities, show the SOC, and actually also be able to test the SOC. It's a bit of a reality check. Do you see this attack? So sometimes they announce when they're hacking so that there's no need to make superfluous extraneous tickets, because we have a mandate to be able to hack all of our products and services before they go live. We don't necessarily want the SOC to run after each and every one of those events. But it is healthy to be able to test your security readiness from inside your organization without waiting for the first best auditor to do that for you. What we also do, and what you see here, is we have the teams work together. So you have the blue team, which is basically our CERT team, and our SOC folks working together with our red team and challenging each other. We participate in this thing called the Cyber Olympics. And it's, again, a way to do some sanity checking and reality testing. How good are we? And actually, what you see is it's really irritating because twice we came out of nowhere. I mean, there was no security organization like this at KPN before, but we came out of nowhere and we got third place. Unfortunately, we got third place 2 years in a row, which bugs the shit out of me. So, you know, still need to win that thing, but that's a whole nother story. The point is that while doing these competitions, it actually motivates the boys to think out of the box. And the girls, by the way, to think out of the box. And it means that then, instead of just making rootkits, because they knew that the systems were going to be reverted to an earlier state and that the rootkits would then disappear, that they started making bootkits, things that are persistent. And it means that the CERT team then had to try to find the bootkit that was running on the system. So they're making little challenges for each other, and they're finding creative outlets to do it, which is not necessarily a part of the day-to-day work, but a creative way to find new attacks and attackers. There's a great saying about malware, and I love it. And the saying is, malware can hide, but it always has to run. And that's why I think that our guys especially are incredibly intrigued with everything around memory forensics. And if you know a bit about the Belgacom case, it's what is there in memory that became the clue, the little breadcrumb to follow for the actual analysis of the affair. So there's this great book, which I got as my Sinterklaas present. I have to be honest, I haven't gotten quite through it yet, but it's on the reading list. So I do think, though, that this is now available for my boys. I do think, though, that this is where we need to have more analysis techniques, more tooling, a better understanding of what's happening. And that becomes remarkably challenging when you're taking a look at things like router forensics and how do you analyze memory on something that, you know, every half a year has a new OS. And what we also did is we took some time and we didn't just randomly run out to buy things. We took some time to really think about what do we need in a lab in order to help us. And this is a challenging question for an organization with the size and scope and scale and diversity of technologies as KPN. We just name it, we have it. Pick the equipment. So when you're doing your lab, you have the tendency to say, oh, I need that too. And do I need this? Yes, I need that too. But it's much smarter to actually really think about what you need first. And as things arise, keep building out. So one of the things we started doing is figuring out what do we need to actually do forensics on our mobile equipment. So if we need a diversification program in addition to the standard tools that are out there, that we assess it on a case-by-case basis and then try to act relatively preemptively, because you don't want to have to buy stuff when you actually need it, but you still want to have some case experience to supplement what you think your shopping list is going to be. And unfortunately, it means that we have things like, this is a joke, obviously, but do you really expect us to image something like that? And does anyone know what that is? It's a very old, no? Okay, it's a very old VAX system. But the point is that we are asked to do very, very exotic things with our network. And that means that in order to do rapid response, it's anything but rapid if you get strange requests like this, that we didn't even know these kinds of devices existed. What we do realize is that in order to understand what to do, we really need to cooperate with other people. When KPN had her hack, we had luckily the help of Fox IT, to help us understand what was happening, what was going on, how we should, really assess our network. And what we've decided to do for the, future term is to always work with other parties, and predominantly for the area of sharing intelligence. And that means that when we can, we'll work with partners to try to understand what are the things that are happening out there and how can we look for it on our own network. And Regin was a perfect example where we spoke to both Kaspersky and Symantec to try to understand and figure out what that meant for an organization like us. What that translates to, though, it's still difficult in an organization when you try to explain why you need to solve something or a particular issue. We go and we try to explain to the operations department, well, this is what we're seeing in this part of the organization, so we think that you need to do this. It always becomes a case of they listen, they smile, and then they walk about their merry way, and very often nothing happens. So one of the fundamental things I think that's required of any forensics team is when you have your analysis, when you're ready to actually figure out what happened during that incident, to also have the power to act. It's really nice you wrote a report, but if you can't do anything with it, and if your follow-up conclusions of looking for that same issue on another part of the network or actually closing stuff down isn't there, it's pointless. So this is one of the biggest reasons that we develop some very strong mandates and capability within our team, not just from the technical point of view, but also from an executive engagement point of view. In terms of doing things differently, we're still learning. So one of the ways to learn is we set up honeypots to look for things we don't know about, because there's a lot we don't know. And if we can get one step ahead of the curve, because here's the deal, we're not always going to have incidents which require forensics. If we don't use, though, the knowledge that we have, it's going to get rusty and out of shape and out of use, so we find targets to go after. Again, it's that mentality from reactive to proactive, and it's that proactive attitude that's really going to make the difference, I think, for a large operator. It also means that we need to share. So when we share IOCs, we don't just share them nationally. In the Netherlands, we have the NCSC, and they have the National Detection Network, which is a sharing program for vital infrastructure to share IOCs amongst each other. We're part of that. But we also do it with other operators across Europe. So we are part of a European telecommunications platform, which is also going to share IOCs between Holland, Germany, Belgium, etc. And there's a lot of partners that we have where we can be very open with and share information that we see with them in a very confidential, closed network. Oh, sorry, I'm not sure why there's a timer, but the last thing that I want to say is maybe about BlackPhone for 2 seconds. BlackPhone for us is interesting because what we want to do is not just talk the talk when it comes to talking about privacy and security of our customers, but also be able to give them the tools to protect the boardroom. And it's really about protecting the boardroom that makes it so vital for us. But that means that when there's an executive that's going to China, I want to make sure that not only can they have their conversation in private, but that they can have the possibility to have a sort of burn device, that everything that they do on that device can be wiped and reinstated when they're back. And there are still some challenges there, but I think this is a very exciting area for us. That means that even when there is a device that's recovered, that even with forensic analysis, if you have an ability to wipe things down to the kernel and securely, that it makes forensic analysis very, very difficult. So I think that's a challenge for KPN in the future. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you. Great, thank you very much, Jaya. Some very interesting thoughts and also a little bit provocative. Just for your information, who in the audience knows what an IOC is? Raise your hand. Okay, so there's a couple of you that do not yet know what it is. It's an indicator of compromise. It's basically something that tells you when you have shit hanging on the wall, basically. Very, very, very silently said. Our next speaker I would like to introduce is somebody that we know for many, many years here in the Belgian market. He's been working, I think, a couple of generations, I must say, within the law enforcement environment. Beirens has, we've seen here in the previous ICSS a year and a half ago, being the head of the Federal Computer Crime Unit. And I think it's going to trace you, Luc, for the rest of your life that you've been doing that, obviously. But also from, of course, that experience, he's been seeing many interesting cases. And from that experience, he's now joined Deloitte, their enterprise risk services team, and sharing his expertise and his experience, of course, with the great team that they already had there. And we had the same question for Luc, obviously, from his experience, but also now from within Deloitte. What are the key messages that you would like to have these people taking away on cyber forensic readiness? Luc?
Thank you and good morning. They asked me to speak 10 minutes, which is a challenge for me. So I have my stopwatch with me, so I should remain more or less in that time frame. I've been hearing a lot about sharing and investing in all kinds of techniques to be forensically prepared on what is happening. Who is going to decide on that? Yeah. It's the board. Yeah. The board will allow you to have the money to buy these things, to have people in place. Is the board engaged at this moment on cyber forensics, and are they prepared for incidents? In most cases, they are not. And I always like to challenge a little bit the board. Just to know, are there people who are at board level here in the room? Yes, one of Fox IT, yes. That's very normal. The board will never come to a conference like this because they consider cybersecurity as something for the IT team and perhaps something for the risk department, but that's not their stuff very often. And so if we are confronted with cyber incidents, very often it's for them the first time that they are confronted with this. And I always like to refer to my friend Sun Chu. My friend would not have loved to work with him because he was quite cruel with his personnel. But he has written a very nice book, The Art of War, and he says, he who exercises no forethought and makes light of his opponents is sure to be defeated. So if you don't think about who might be your opponent, who might be intruding in your network, and what for, what are the crown jewels in your network, you will be defeated. They will get into your network and they will get to your crown jewels. So did you already exercise some forethought on what could happen on your infrastructure and how you will react if there is a cyber incident? And all the examples that have been given, it's just saying, okay, this happened. You have to consider how the board will be confronted with these incidents. And very often it's in different ways that they are informed of an incident that happens. Yeah? whether there is a large amount of money that disappears from the bank accounts of the company. It might be that the hacker is inside your network, but it might also be that one of your employees was lured by somebody that tried to do an internet fraud using phishing, spear phishing campaign. So all of a sudden the money is away. Yeah? How will they react on this? Yeah? Or there is an email coming from a hacker saying, okay, I've been analyzing the nice application you have developed for your customers on these smartphones, and I have found a vulnerability, and I have an exploit on this. Please pay me a nice ransom, and I will not disclose this vulnerability, and I will not make this exploit free for use by the hacker community. How are you going to? So here you still have the hacker communicating with you in private, which means nobody else is aware of what is happening. But then there are the other examples, and it was already mentioned this morning, Rex Mundi, who has attacked quite a number of companies in Belgium, going to grab the data of the company and then publishing a small part of it and saying, okay, I have a few records of you and I show them to you, and it's publicly published. So everybody knows already about it, and then they say, okay, pay me now the nice ransom of 50,000 euro, and I will not disclose the rest of the database. So there you have already publicly available data. Or it might be that all of a sudden in your network, you seem to have lost control of devices, over the devices. Or eventually you have a fleet controlled with all these black boxes in these lorries, and all of a sudden they disappear from your screen. What has happened? Or the police knocks on your door. That's even worse. Yeah? In the other cases, you are aware of what is happening, but it might also be that the police is knocking with a house search warrant, saying, we have seen that from your network, data is going on and helping in a DDoS attack. We will do some investigation in your environment. Are they ready for this? Or customers may phone you and say, okay, I try to use your application, but I seem not to be able to reach your services. What is happening? Do you know what is happening? Is it internally in your network? Is it outside of your network? A lot of questions. These are the moments that the board will be confronted with the incidents. So, and then in the unprepared boardroom, they say, what is happening? Is this really your data? Of course, in the prepared boardroom, they will also ask the question, is it really your data? Yeah? And then, are they in our network? And are they still in our network? And what can they lay their hands on? And does it have an impact in our business? And how can we stop this? Who is this criminal? Help us. Yeah? Very often you end up in a boardroom full of emotions. It's unexpected. There is disbelief. They don't believe what is happening to them. Yeah? And sometimes it's not even taken seriously, because they say, okay, yeah, this is a joke. But then the hacker makes proof of the data that he has in his hands. Yeah? It's out of scope of daily matters. The board is used to handle a lot of things, but not the cyber incidents. And they feel that there is a loss of control on the situation. So they are sometimes trying to ignore what is happening. So they say, okay, let's not look to it. Perhaps he will go away. If we don't act upon this, he will probably not disclose the rest of our database. Yeah? And some are trying to say, okay, how are we going to act? But what should we do? Yeah? There is, in a lot of cases, and I've been confronted with a lot of boards that were victim of a cyber incident, very often you get chaos because they are not prepared of what is happening. And then you see the guy who is pushing the panic button and say, okay, help us. So they should prepare. But in the same time, you have to look at these time aspects. Yeah? of the incident. The infection, and it's already mentioned, could have taken place in your network weeks before the moment that you discover it, or even months, or even more. And then you get sometimes a very short period to react. If there is extortion, he says, okay, now pay me within 72 hours. And you have to pay with bitcoins. The board doesn't even know about bitcoins. They don't know how to buy bitcoins. And they have 72 hours to take a decision and to go and ask for somebody to buy bitcoins, eventually, if they want to pay. And then, how long can you keep this a secret in your environment? Are you sure that you can keep this a secret in your... Do you have something in place very quickly so that you can encapsulate it and be sure that this incident will not be spread? Of course, if it's already in the public, then it's very difficult to keep it a secret. You may be sure that from the moment something is in the wild, the journalists will start to make phone calls to you, the good journalists. The others just publish whatever they have seen, and perhaps they will call you afterwards. Yeah? What you may be sure is that you will have a tsunami of rumors going over the social media which go unchecked. These people don't have the principles of good journalism. They immediately retweet whatever is spectacular, and they are adding some more spectacular things to it, and you don't verify it because you're just not a journalist. Are you ready to see what is happening, what people are talking about on the incident and about your network and about your company? And then something which is underestimated. You have an incident. Do you know where the experts are that might help you? Yeah? And even if you find them, because these people have to be there on a very short notice, that's what you want. But there are so few of them that it's difficult to find them, and if you find them, then you need some time to establish a contract. Because these people will say, okay, we'll free some specialists for you, but we have to have a contract. And it might take some days. In a moment where you say, okay, I only have 3 days to react upon it, or there is a threat, or my activity is down. You want to have it immediately and quickly. These are all questions and time aspects that the board has to take account of. And then the assessment of the infection of a network, you can say, okay, I found one server, but is it the only server that is infected in the network? How long will it take to see all the rest of the infected workstations and servers in the network? It might take days or even months before this is done. And then the cleanup is the next phase, because you can say, okay, here I have all the infected parts of my network. I have to clean it. It takes also quite some time. So this compared to the immediate reaction that is required from the board makes that you have to say, okay, I have to prepare myself and take some dilemmas in front or think about. Do exercises on it. Go to the board and say, okay, let's prepare for some questions. Are we going to call external experts? And if we are going to call external experts, can we make a contract with them up front so that at the moment that we need them, they will be there? And there is no time lost on discussions on contracts or whatever. They will be ready for you at the moment that there is an investigation. Are we going to pay for a ransom? Perhaps it might save us some time. If they disclose all the data, then perhaps we'll be liable for distributing personal data or not protecting it well enough. Under which circumstances will we negotiate with the criminals, eventually pay some small amounts of money just to prevent that the data is in the public, before we could protect or take some protective measures, meanwhile. Yeah? Are we going to close down the network before we know the real extent of all the infections in the network? Are we going to exchange these indicators of compromise? Because I hear a lot about exchanging the indicators of compromise. But if in the indicators of compromise you might see the extent of the infection in the network that has been attacked, the board will say, no way, we won't distribute this. Because otherwise, other parties may know what is happening and how big the extent is in my network. So it's not so obvious to go and exchange. So the board should be aware of what is going to happen. So, and then, are we going to communicate with the authorities? Do we know what exactly is needed? Is there a regulation? Is there an obligation legally? Are we penally liable if we are not communicating? Are we going to communicate with the customers, the employees, and the public at large? Be prepared for those communications. So, I will go a little bit faster. Yeah? Go and make the CXO level aware and engage them in this preparedness. Yeah? Organize an internal cyber incident team, crisis management, technical guys, communication guys, have an external partner ready if you are a large company, prepare policies and procedures that allow for forensics, because forensics might do interception of data. So you have to have this ready in your procedures and policies. Yeah? Have the technical data ready, and the awareness is the most important thing. If the people in your company know what is going to happen or what might happen to them, they will be ready, and this is better than all the rest of the forensics, do the awareness and the training. And for the rest, don't think that you will cover everything. Perhaps think about an insurance for your cyber incident. And that's where I will round up. And I only had 1-2 minutes over time.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Luc. Great. So last but not least, Alain. Alain has been working with Swift for many years. I think in a similar set of experience as Luc. So great to have you also here, Alain. Now working within Swift as also a CISO, and also having been active in domain of both embedded security as well as different transactional systems. I'd love to hear your experiences, please.
Good morning. Thank you, Ulrich. So good morning, all. So first, I will have to apologize because I don't necessarily have all the expertise of Jaya and Luc in handling cyber incidents. Quite unfortunately, or fortunately, we had none yet at Swift. So we are on those half of the world where it's not that we had one, but we are maybe will have one. So it's very comfortable for me as well, because I'm the CSO, so it's much better to come in a company after having had the first one, like being in place when the first one would come. So at the basic policy we have at Swift is something that you all know probably from Apollo 13, is failure is not an option. You know what Swift is doing. So a lot of what I will be speaking about is about preparedness. Preparedness in many dimensions. I will focus obviously on forensics. I will give a glimpse of other things we do as well. Just, building on many things you have heard from Ronald, from Jaya, and from Luc. So I'll be repeating a bit. I'll try not to be too much repeating of those. So the way we think about cyber is along those 5 dimensions. So it all starts with learning, okay? And I think you all have to reckon, and we all have to reckon, that humbleness is fundamental in the world of cyber, okay? I think we will never win the war. We just have to try to keep at pace with the hackers. NSA, GCHQ have shown us that there are other parties that we thought were friends, that maybe still are friends, but have given weapons to other people. And I like metaphors, and I'll use a couple of metaphors as I speak. I'm sure that the first Smith Wesson was for a sheriff, but it didn't land in the sheriff's hands only at the end, right? So whatever we call it, Regin or whatever weapon, there are many other names, secret world, they will get in the hands of the people you don't like that would get those, like Ronald was saying. So I don't know whether it will be in years or decades. I hope it's more decades than years, where more common hackers would get this, but be ready. The other message as well that I would like to pass is that prevention is not over. Okay? People speak a lot about detection and response and all of that. Never give up prevention. Never, ever. Okay? It means that on your cyber budget, okay, the ratio will change between prevention and detection, maybe, but never invest less in prevention than before. It just means the pie will grow. The value of prevention is really making the life very difficult for hackers. And you have the top-notch hackers, okay, NSA, GCHQ, and there are a couple of other countries at that level in the world. But there are many, many others that you can just stop. Okay, so remove the noise from all these hackers with very strong prevention. Planning is about getting better in detection and all of that, and we all have this checklist kind of thing of all technology we deployed. And I'll speak more about that a bit later, but technology is nice, but it really doesn't stop there anymore. Okay? We have heard about people, and that's more true than ever. People are the solution to make the detection better. When it comes to forensics, it's really in the managed space that all of us think about. And I will try to a bit demystify that and explain that forensic has a much greater value than reacting to a cyber incident. So I'm back to the kill chain, okay? So I don't know how many hands were raised, but that's the kill chain of Lockheed Martin. So basically, it just says that if you build something, just put yourself in the shoes of a hacker. Just do that once. And you know where you want to go, and you're just trying to find the best attack path to get to the safe who has the money in it. Okay, it's like Bonnie and Clyde, right? No difference. Okay, they are just, instead of trying to find money, they are trying to find bits and bytes. So the basic value that we all know, or we all guess to have in forensics, is how not to repeat this later, right? Let's learn from it, and let's find the signature for the malware, and reverse engineering, and all of that, so we'll be ready next time. Ready next time. Okay. That's not good enough for me, right? We are a worldwide infrastructure. If I will be ready next time, I will not be in the job anymore. So it's not good for me. It's not good for my company, okay? If we get that critical infrastructure having hit by a cyber incident, this may be company life-threatening. So it's a question of life for a company we are speaking about. We are not speaking about millions or thousands. We are speaking about company survival. So you better do something, or we better do something, not to be ready the next time, but be ready before. So once you get an infection, we have to find out which systems are infected, okay? How deep is the infection? How many layers in your wonderful castle of prevention you have built? How many layers are infected? We have to find how it has been infected. Now, in order to do that, you have really to find out what is your normal system behavior. What is normal on a network? What is normal on your system? That will ease the fast detection to allow faster recovery. Okay? Now, that's after the incident. So if we just want to be a bit better, we really would like to find Bonnie and Clyde before they go to the safe. Okay? When they break a window, you would like in your house, I guess, an alarm system, right? Now we have wonderful technology, dimension, detection, and we heard from Ronald, hackers are stealthy. So they try to go under your radar screen. So how can we stop that earlier on? Well, you would like to find out that a host has been compromised before the money has been stolen. So a way to do that would be to do forensics on host regularly. Don't wait for hackers to have succeeded. Do forensics on host, pre-incident. Now, how could we find traffic on the network, which is the first step that a hacker will always need? Okay? You always get in your network through network traffic. How can you find that? Well, define what is normal activity on your network. And you can have the best design practices in the world. You can, like we do, I mean, we try to at least, I will not pretend we are the best in the world. We try to define our systems and have whitelisting all of the flows that are normal. But you know, systems do things as well. They live, okay? The vendors have done things in their design, their own software, operating system, middleware, that you may not be fully aware of. That happens from time to time. So you better know those so that you profile your network, like Ronald was saying early on, and you would spot those anomalies. Again, if you actively, what I heard, active defense, we call that at Swift internal intelligence, okay? Which is basically going deep in your network and knowing things that happen there. First of all, you will see, you will discover plenty of things. We did that, actually discover plenty of things we didn't know were happening on our network, nothing related to cyber, but were really helpful for a number of areas that are essential for the system to continue working well. But this is really a difficult exercise to do, to know what normal is. It is essential to detection, and it is really essential to buy you a fast recovery with a fully clean environment. Because if you don't know what normal is, how can you know your environment is clean? So how do you know? So I'm speaking about forensics. How do you know what did happen? Okay? So it's basically about finding a needle in a haystack, right? Because if you look on your network, you'll see gigabyte, exabyte, terabyte, whatever is, I don't remember the whatever exponent, of data flying on your network. So it's a real nightmare. On planes, you have flight recorders, right? And the flight recorder, basically people look at it after the plane crashed. Okay, we saw that incredible movie. I mean, I guess you saw that yesterday, that plane crossing the highway. Completely incredible stuff, okay? Now, if you have all of this data, you can use them not only after the incident, but before the incident. So think about your body, right? You go to your doctor, you do an ECG, it tells you what is the normal for you to behave, right? We do that. So why don't you do that with your systems? What is the normal state of your system when they work normally, okay? And then when it goes bad, you can find out from IOCs or other ways, okay, things that are different from what you expect. And this may not be hacker. As I said, this may just be a suspicion, and you will have to investigate, but do that before it happens. Do that recurrently, and to the point of Luc, you'll need people to do that. Okay, you need investment, and you need to convince the board. Not all companies have the same appetite for investing, but this is basically an insurance you are buying. Think about this as an insurance. If you don't want to be insured, don't do it. And the day whatever hits the fan, you'll get to pay without having an insurance. But this is an essential stuff to work on. As I said, people are key, and they will make the difference in this internal intelligence and this preparedness. Okay? There are multiple ways to prepare for people. The gaming is a very good stuff to do, especially if you don't have exercise. Do rehearsal as much as you want, as much as you can, and get to know key people who are doing that on the market. Okay? What I call cyber firemen, and there is one in the room, there are others in the world. The cyber firemen, I mean, I call that cyber firemen because there are people coming at your place before the fire or after the fire starts, but you know that firemen go in houses before the fire starts to check that you are ready. So go and speak to a cyber fireman, not only after, but before. He can tell you whether your environment is in the same place, in the same state, and whether your processes are there for helping you respond. With this, I'll stop here.
Thank you very much, Alain. Excellent. There's one more slide, and it's the thank you slide. So, great. Very interesting thoughts. As actually I mentioned to the three panelists, the difficulty now for me as a moderator is to guide these people because we need to have something to discuss about. And the three of you are so aligned that it's going to be extremely difficult. But let's start it slightly differently. Jaya, do you think that you are cyber forensic ready with KPN?
I don't think you're ever really ready. I think what you do is try to be a little bit prepared. It's kind of like the Boy Scout principle, you know, the half of the battle is knowing and the other half is preparing for it. So we try to be the Boy Scout. We just try to be prepared, but truly ready, I don't think you ever are. And I think there were some really good points brought out that for Luc, your example about how do you find the experts. I think part of the deal is always to have someone who you trust in part of a forensic retainer program. Of course, we try to do a lot of things, seeing the volume of incidents that we have, we try to do a lot of things by ourselves. But when it requires a full-blown investigation, we need friends. We need partners who can help us get to a place where if there's ever any potential dispute or something that needs to be going to the police, that have a second set of eyes, that are capable of doing further analysis, backing up our initial evidence gathering, etc. So I encourage all of you to have a very good, reputable party on retainer.
What's your biggest challenge to be cyber forensic ready at this point in time?
Again, you know, we came out of nowhere. So we're growing, and we're not there yet. We're just on the way. And I think it's very easy to get lost in that volume. And I think part of the issue is we know what we have to do, and now it's about execution power. If we cannot figure out how to scale effectively and cost effectively as well, in terms of the kinds of incidents that we see, the ones that we handle, having enough knowledge in-house, and finding the right people and keeping them, because the kind of security people we work with, you know, they're a breed apart. So you need to make sure that they're challenged, effectively used, and that you keep them educated enough that they're...
And motivated.
And motivated, yeah.
Okay. Alain, do you think, are you within Swift, are you cyber forensic ready?
I think it's really difficult to answer that question. I always take the metaphor of running a bike. The best way to run a bike is to fall from a bike. That's unfortunate to say when you speak about business and cyber. So our main challenge is that because of what I said earlier on, we're never faced in the past with cyber incident. That's a key challenge we see for ourselves. So we'll try and learn as much as we can from other parties who are champion in driving bikes now. So that's a key challenge. The key challenge, the other key challenge as well is that nowadays cyber is freak. How will it be 3 years down the road? I mean, we have many incident targets. I mean, NSA, Snowden, all of that. So it's on the board, on the newspaper every day. Will it continue to be in 3 years? Whereas hackers will continue to be there. So that attention, I mean, that's another more long term, but that thing is something that is as well potentially worrying.
Luc, you wanted to add something?
Yeah, of course, the board has been briefed at Deloitte, but it's a never-ending process. Yeah? Also, that have to take into account the change in your environment. We are now looking at moving to the cloud, which has new aspects to add on what we had already in place. And so it's a process that you have to verify each time again. And while you're moving to a new environment, you have already to take these aspects into account. Very often, they are only looking at the functional aspects. What do we want exactly? You have immediately to integrate the specific security arguments in these discussions so that you are prepared even if you move to a new environment. So we'll, well, it's difficult to say, yes, we are ready, because tomorrow you might be in the newspaper as being the next victim. So I won't say we've done quite some activities on it, but I'm I'm not sure. I hope we did for the best.
Okay. I mean, you clearly stated having board level attention and also involvement. And obviously the three of you are on that side. I mean, you have obviously good visibility towards your boards to get investments going. But there's many people out there in the audience that don't have that. How do you convince your board in making those investments, in getting people, in getting that contract signed with Deloitte, with Fox IT, before an incident actually happens? Jaya.
Well, I have a saying that you're never going to find what you're not looking for. How many of you are actually monitoring for attacks? Well, actually, I don't know if you're just bored now or you don't feel like sticking your hand up. If that's the actual number that's actually monitoring for attacks, how do you know that you're not hacked right now?
Well, yeah, maybe start asking the question first. How many of you have experienced an attack and are also ready to say that you have been? Okay, I see only like 3 or 4 hands.
Yeah.
5, maybe 6, partially. So, yeah, please continue.
Yeah, no. So if that amount of hands for also the monitoring part is true, there was only 3 or 4 hands for that as well. Then that's the condition. Again, you're not going to find if you don't actively look. So it could all be happening in your backyard without you having any knowledge of it. So I think it becomes really the case of showing your board what the real situation is. The sanity checking that's required of these large organizations. You can only do that when you actually can supply, look, this is actually what's happening on a day-to-day basis. And only then, I think, can you start engaging them at that level to say, here's what we're trying to protect, here's who we're trying to protect it from, and here's the current status of how well we're doing.
Alain, you mentioned normal as the basis. So how did you define the normal? How did you get to understanding what the normal really is within the company?
So it was, and it is, an ongoing challenge. Okay, so it's not something that we have finished. It's something we have started years back. And the Snowden revelations, 18 months back, give it a push more than in the past. So
then the barrier to normal goes like this?
No, the investment.
Okay.
To get to know better normal. It is really difficult to, I think, convince the board of doing those things that they believe is just no business value at all. So taking examples like Target, I think Target, the States has been a very prevalent case, where millions of people had their credit cards divulged to hackers. Those people got bills at home, okay, and so rogue bills. So I think that dimension is of using real cases will help you motivating the board.
Look, you have seen many cases, so you can talk about those things without mentioning the names with your current customers and potential customers. So you must be in the driver's seat to get people involved and get those boards convinced, aren't you?
Yeah, and that's for the moment one of my major activities. And if we're talking how do you address to the board, because the board is the one who takes the decisions what will be on the agenda on the next board meeting. And if you even the suggestion to come up with cybersecurity is very often, okay, you have 10 minutes. Go and explain in 10 minutes what is going on. So sometimes it's better to have an incident and then you get the board attention, for sure. But then it's too late, of course. So, of course, our company has different services that are being offered, and as auditor of a lot of companies, we bring this to the audit committee and say, okay, let's go and check if there are a number of controls in place so that you won't have the impact of a major cyber incident, and go and check. So we bring it to the companies via the board, the audit committee, that then challenges the board and says, okay, what have you in place? It's of course a unique opportunity for a company like Deloitte to challenge these companies, but it's very difficult even via an audit committee to get this attention. And if you don't have already, and because if you have statistics, then it's easy to go and explain it. But if you don't have the statistics and you need money to be able to build up the statistics, you also have to have the go of the board for that. So it's a very difficult situation to obtain proof that you need it. And examples are the best thing, but even in the audience, everybody will say, yeah, it's for my neighbor and not for me. And that's also the mindset of very often of the board.
Okay. Maybe to switch a little bit gears here in terms of there's a demand and there's also maybe a need. Like I've shown, there's regulation in the making, especially for critical infrastructure companies. Jaya, how do you feel about being regulated on this, and where actually we have, for instance, the Dutch ministry that's demanding from you to show at any point in time when you had a breach or a cyber incident, and how far does that need to go, or should it not happen at all? I mean, you're also a telecoms operator. That means that you're part of Article 13. How do you feel about that?
So maybe I can explain a few things. I don't know if everyone knows what Article 13 is. Article 13 is the telecommunications law that requires us to have lawful intercept and a couple of other things in place in order to do follow-up on criminal proceedings. The actual issue of regulation is, for us, not necessarily a choice. We have so much regulation. We're probably the most regulated industry sector in the Netherlands, the telecommunications sector. So it's not really like, how do I feel about it? Well, it's a fact of life. So that being said, and the principle from KPN is we have a very simple duty to our customers. That means that it goes without saying that we will comply to all legal requirements. That part goes without saying. But I think it's also like what Bruce Schneier said yesterday. Just complying to the legal requirements is not enough. You actually need to do a heck of a lot more than just fulfill your legal obligations. And that's also the way that I see it when it comes to security and readiness. The only problem with that is that legal regulations have to have a point, and we have to have a common benefit from it. So I have no issues with this meldplicht for cybersecurity incidents or for any other meldplicht. But the point with melding, and for the non-Dutch speakers, it means the duty of care to report incidents and to report issues or data leaks or privacy issues or whatever. But all of that reporting has to actually have a valid reason. Why are we reporting? All this time that we've been reporting, I've never gotten an overview of all the different reports that have been submitted by the different telecom operators. It would be really handy, actually, to understand what is the primary cause of data leaks across the sector. If we're going to report on cybersecurity incidents, great, then tell us what we can actually do. If you see a storm flood and there's some analysis that can be done over the types of things that are happening, the types of root causes that are being found, commonalities in technology or software, etc. All of those things are extremely useful in order to improve the situation. So to report just to report, I don't understand that.
How detailed do you have to be in that reporting for the
very
for the
detailed.
Very detailed.
Yeah, and we have multiple.
Up to the IP addresses, up to the persons, up to whatever?
It depends on how many questions we are very detailed. That's the current way that we are melding. But there's now a new legislation that's in play that is being asked for comment to report also cybersecurity incidents in a different format. Also potential cybersecurity incidents. And there's going to be a lot of discussion about that.
Okay. Alain, how's that? Because you're also within the finance industry, also under heavy regulation. Is that affecting also, in your case, the activities on the day-to-day?
I mean, Swift is, to that end, lucky. Lucky because we are not regulated. And we are unlucky. We are unlucky because we have an informal regulations. So we don't know the rules at the start. That's one. And we are operating in 200 I don't remember, 9 or 12 countries. So which means, and probably KPN is operating as well in many different countries, so it means that all of these countries have their own initiatives. Not all countries are as leading edge as others, but ultimately they all will do something. So this variety of initiatives at government level to better understand, or better try to control the strength of each nation industry, which is very valid as a concern at the nation level, generates a lot of overhead, which I think, to the point of Jaya, is not necessarily helping, is just creating more reporting. What, to my end, what I would really appreciate is that the supply chain be better controlled. Because, I mean, through Snowden, we have learned on things that happened in the supply chain, which is just a killer. So I heard about people downloading software, I mean, crafted by malicious to as a new driver in one. You don't need that. The box comes with inbuilt backdoors, right? So that's what Snowden at least pretends. I've never seen one. So the supply chain regulation, I mean, or certification or whatever scheme would really be helpful to the full industry, because one, it will help the supply chain to be more successful, and two, it will relieve the job of people using the supply chain from each and every of us checking that the supply chain works well.
Okay. Do we have a microphone, by the way? You're running the microphone. Any questions? So we have 2 microphones, no questions. Okay.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Okay.
So go ahead. Yeah.
So I have a question. You say you're not regulated, but are you subject to comply to PCI DSS?
No, we are not.
You don't have to do PCI DSS?
No.
Ah, okay.
Not formally, but we have informal rules.
Okay.
Through an oversight body, a worldwide oversight body, which is representing the G10 central banks in the world, which comes with informal rules that we have to comply to.
Okay.
So we still have to comply, but they are not like
strict.
Published.
Interesting. Okay. And what about the European cybersecurity strategy? Because, I mean, one of my biggest issues is the fact that the EU cybersecurity strategy says that everyone has to comply to it with the exception of hardware and software vendors. So that means that breaks your supply chain responsibility, at least, completely. So your sector and my sector are responsible to comply to the EU cybersecurity strategy. So is transport, healthcare, etc., but not hardware and software.
I agree with you. It's a real problem. We are not as well in the retail business, so we are a bit different from other organizations. I mean, we are not interacting with people. Mm-hmm. We are interacting with business. But you're right, there is no reason to exclude hardware or software. I mean, as I said, the supply chain is a critical element of... I mean, if you just listen to what the last 6 months, we had so many vulnerabilities, right? Mm-hmm. Heartbleed, Ghost, Shell Shock, Poodle. I mean, you had so many. Okay, now it's open source. Oh, you may say it's good or bad, but software, ultimately, a hacker succeeds because there is software bug, right? I'm a software engineer, so I can just play it guilty. I'm sure I left behind me many bugs that maybe hackers exploited or not, I don't know. But you're right, software is the problem. I fully agree.
So Jaya, how do you feel about that concept of trying to get also to the supply chain, and actually also to Luc? Is that something that you guys are including? But you first. So also including the supply chain in doing the whole understanding of what potential threats could be there.
I think you have to, but what I really miss is that, you know, it's great, it's a very easy target to have to regulate the industries that are facing customers, that are directly on the front end. But if you can't make it also the responsibility of the back end, I mean, we just buy this stuff, we have to integrate it with our networks, and we have to configure it, and we have to then deliver it to everybody else. How can you hold us accountable? And as the only party, I'm not saying that we shouldn't be accountable, but I'm saying that there's a shared responsibility, and it grows across the board, all the way to the people who are making routers, who are making the software components, who are making the libraries that are then integrated into software components. So open source or not, even when it's open source, it'll still be used as a library, which is integrated into a commercialized product. So that's why we are all vulnerable unless you make sure that up until the beginning of the food chain, that things are done well, and not just regulate and control the end of it. That's pointless.
Rick?
Yeah. Governance of the supply chain is of course, crucial. So if the box arrives at the customer, that you are sure what is in it. But then what we saw last year was the attack of producers of equipment to set up VPNs. And within the company, so several companies were hacked, and they adapted the firmware from the devices. And then with the next update, for those that did the update of the firmware, all the devices of the customers that used to make the connections, the VPN connections to the industrial control systems, they were infected, making available the credentials on these boxes, making it vulnerable for attack from outside. So it's not only the supply chain going from manufacturing over all the interventions for the that until it arrives at the customer, but also what happens afterwards, so that you are sure that if you use these devices, that it still remains secure. But that's the level of activity we see now at the criminal side, just to get access to your critical infrastructure.
So say that you get it right, and that you get your board convinced, and that you have your cyber forensic readiness internally in the company. How do you ask your suppliers then to also be cyber forensic ready?
Yeah, it's a part of the procurement procedure. Okay. So you should have several dispositions in these. But even then, even if you put it, yeah, it's a, let's say, a contractual obligation. How can you enforce it? Very often it's a difficulty. They can say, okay, we comply with this disposition or whatever, but you're never sure that really everything is in place until you have done, let's say, an audit or required an audit by an external company.
Okay, do we have any questions? Yes, okay, over there. Can you please first state your name and your company, and then...
Yes.
Yeah, it's on.
Hello, Arnaud de Gorin from the financial sector in Belgium. You mentioned, Jaya, all the advantages to have what you call the security operations center, etc. In this domain, we have seen that the guideline is don't touch, wait when an incident occurred. On the other side, you have the traditional incident management where the mindset is back to business as soon as possible. How do you have these two approaches living next to each other or together?
I think that's part of actually a good forensics process. You still need to do evidence collection, but you do need to restore the actual operating capability of that business element depending on its criticality. You know, so if it's a very critical little thing, you need to make sure it's up and running no matter what, but you still need to be able to do your analysis. So having backups, disaster recovery plans, and assuming that you would handle it in the way that's been prescribed is the hope of every organization. And of course, that's not always the true. When you actually are running an incident and you have the stress of that, you don't always do that. So you are, you know, like at KPN, I can tell you before I got there, I know that when we had our incident, the biggest focus of our company, it was called a code red. The biggest focus was to get out of that code red, to get back to operating with business as usual and not focus on, you know, oh my gosh, what's all going on? Because it was very difficult to comprehend what the heck was happening while at the same time bleeding. So the first thing is just standard triage, stop the bleeding. And then you can try to figure out what the actual cause of the bleeding is, and et cetera, and then really staunch it at source. But the first thing is to just make sure you can get back to business as normal. While we have the question things, you mentioned the cloud was very difficult. I find the concept of the right to audit in cloud an incredibly important thing, but something that's not guaranteed by the majority of cloud providers because it's far too expensive. So when you have a forensic incident for yourself or for your customers in the cloud, I'm still trying to figure out how on earth we're going to deal with that when we don't have an external right to audit.
Are you a cloud provider yourself?
Yes, we are.
So how do you deal with it yourself?
We provide a right to audit.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that goes the whole chain for any type of customer, both from a SaaS perspective as well as from a complete infrastructure perspective.
Well, the right to audit is
Yeah.
usually like a blanket term, and then the sub-specifications about how you agree to do that. Do you do that yourself? Do you get a third-party person involved? Is it done by the company who had the breach, et cetera? Those are all things you can agree upon depending on the capabilities of the person who you're taking this contract with. But in general, we provide the right to audit, and we have that reasonable expectations from the people who we get cloud services from.
Okay, so that transparency goes pretty deep there. Okay. Any other question? Yes.
My name is Philippe Sombat, account executive at Unisys. I was very interested hearing about Mr. Desausoi, who said, well, you have to get weaponed before the others, right? Before the hackers. I'm very curious to know where, as there are many suppliers, many solutions in the market, where you get your sources, how you get weaponed before the others. I'm very curious about hearing that.
So just to be sure, we are not interested in the weapon, right? We're interested in the blanket that will stop the bullet, right? So, I mean, it's really a pyramid. I portray that as a pyramid. So at the bottom of the pyramid, you have the sources. Just read the Wall Street Journal, right? It starts there, right? It's there available to anyone. Then you have the next level, which are usually country level or organization that shares information between peers. Okay? In the financial sector, there is a group in Belgium, there is a group in Europe. We operate in many countries, so we participate. I saw that Mark Hanover is here, I think, somewhere, maybe not in this group, but in Switzerland there is some in Holland, the FI Isaac in Holland, there is in the UK, FISIE, there are in the US, so there are many, many. So that's the second layer. Then you have third layers, you can have, I mean, the cyber fireman I mentioned. I mean, you can go and acquire their services and discuss with them, and there are not zillions of those people in the world, but there are a couple of good ones. I think there are 2 in the room, there are more in the world. There are Eastern, there are Western, there are Asians, so just go and speak to them. No, we are a little bit lucky that we are recognized as a critical infrastructure. We have a name, so when we knock on the door, people are happy to open the door, right? And that gives us as well to the next level, which is the top of the pyramid, which are government-level organizations that I would not mention, but that have a keen interest in helping us survive any cyber attack.
Jaya, second. I had an additional question to that, because you obviously mentioned the blue team, red pill, red pill concept, which is excellent in terms of also trying to find those weapons, and you're even building, as you said, some rootkits that you install. In a similar context, how do you decide the weaponizing of these things, and how far you want to go with some of those tests, basically? So how do you decide on this?
Well, you know, what it is it's part of a very simple philosophy of sanity checking, and not being, I think your point to humbleness, you know, to really respect your opponent. I think that's part and parcel of why we do what we do. And it's because of the fact that I believe we should hack ourselves first before we get hacked. Because let's face it, I mean, I'm going to be very open. I think that we, as KPN, we have regular small hacks every day, fine. But I think we will definitely be hacked again, a big one, again. So that means that because the attack surface is so large, that the only way to truly protect yourself is not to pretend that it's not going to happen, or that I can prevent it completely. I don't think I can, so I want to know, if they come in, how do they come in? And that's why we do red teaming. And that's why we do blue teaming, to make sure that we know, are we capable of even seeing these kinds of attacks? So they need to push the envelope in terms of creativity, and they need to take it as far as they can take it. My attitude in the team is, by any means necessary. The opponent doesn't say, oh, let's make only friendly attacks possible, so neither should we.
What was the typical profile of those people within the blue team, red team? Do you switch them every once in a while?
They need to go through screening. So that's a basic requirement. They need to pass screening, but other than that, I'm pretty open to just about any kind of person. As long as they're smart, hungry, and up for a challenge, those are the kinds of boys and girls we look for.
Do you switch them every once in a while?
Yeah, we do.
The red
Yeah.
team becomes
And
blue
in
team,
fact,
or reversely?
In fact, I have even more interesting switching because I have 4 teams at the moment, and 5 if you include the kind of direction we give to the SOC, that are responsible for security within KPN. And what we try to do is see how often we can swap people over. And we even have one guy who wrote, really strategy and policy stuff. He moved over to the red team. And he already had a quite technical background. I mean, most of the people, even though they're writing security policies, they still have a technical background. And we were able to take him and make him fully go over to the red team. And there was one person from the red team who thought that he would enjoy writing cryptographic policies and doing more on identity management. And so he swapped over from being an ethical hacker to writing policies, thinking about strategy, developing products.
Luc, that's in your league.
Yeah. How do we know about the weapons or the defense systems that are available? And of course, if you're a company, it's very difficult to know what is in the market. And for this, you need a partner who has experience with a lot of solutions that are open in the market, and that's the advantage of calling in an external partner to help you out. The profiles you need for people working at a service provider is that they have an open mindset, that they are open for new things that are in the market, that they are eager to go and learn about what is there, even if it seems very strange solutions and that's also the need that we have to go and discuss with people in academia world, so that because they have all kind of bright ideas, but very often they don't have the budget to continue to develop it. So working together with them, having several solutions, and then the advantage of an external partner is that these external partners have been with a lot of other companies implementing different solutions, because every company chooses its own solution. And then if you have the implementations, then you see the advantages, you see the weaknesses. This building upon this experience gives you a better use or better solution if you go and work together with an external partner, so that you have a better protection and perhaps a better solution than if you would do it on your own.
Do you have more questions from the floor? Well, from the mounted floor. We are on the floor actually here. It's quite strange. Luc, who is Rex Mundi? No.
Sorry, I was
so it's good that there's a question over there, but who's Rex Mundi?
If I knew, I would have arrested him long before, because he started already in 2012. And the guy is using all the possible tools to stay anonymous on the internet, using Tor, for example, using bitcoins. And he's quite experienced in staying anonymous. Yeah? I won't say that the tools he used to get into the companies that were a victim were super, and that he is a very intelligent hacker as such. The weaknesses of the companies were there, and he just used it. He's very good in protecting his identity. So
Did you ever do some sort of profiling on him?
we did, but I cannot disclose a lot about the...
I tried to give an answer to Roland's question earlier on, because I said I was, but I'm not, apparently. Could he be one of the team guys working within Jaya's red team or blue team?
They're cleared, no.
Good. Question over there. Yes.
Can you speak slow?
Anybody particularly who would like to ask that to? Anybody? So, Luc, I'll direct it to you.
Yeah, that's really the big problem. The smaller companies who don't have large budgets, they often don't have even the budget to have a own IT team. So if you have an IT team, somebody who is specialized in security is already a very expensive item. So there are, let's say, guides that will help out. So there is the Belgian cybersecurity guide who is available at the front, at the reception, with some basic elements. Of course, this will not help you immediately to protect you, but it gives you a nice view on what you should think about. Of course, it's up to the industry and the sectors itself to go to their member firms and say, okay, this is what is available. Take some time to read it and take management decisions. Of course, the budget in such small companies is not big, so let's go for standard solutions, off-the-shelf commercial solutions that are available for security. The better and the more controls you have in place, the more the possibility is there that they will pass your door because you have the bolts on the door where your customer left, for example, the window open. The more you put these controls in place, the more secure you are. But if you are a target, a very specific target of a criminal, it will be very difficult to keep him out of your environment.
So basically, yeah, I think that the same rules apply to being a large company or a small company. Of course, the size and the scale are going to differ, but the type of activities that you have to do are going to be exactly the same. Maybe you need to buy lesser equipment and lesser tools, but in any case. So I'm going to try to wrap up here because I know that lunch is calling us. I can hear it just from the sideways. I asked the panelists to, as I mentioned before, to give you actually some two concrete ideas about what to do next, things that you can take away, that you can act upon starting tomorrow, and that you can actually come back and say again, okay, it's now at the end of February, so the January wish list is now gone. Your personal commitments, now you can start with some business perspectives and business wish lists. So why not stepping away here with a wish list of at least 6 or a couple of others, and then you can choose for yourself. I think a couple of the things that you mentioned, Luc, are heading to that direction. So I'll start with you. The 2 things to do to be cyber forensic ready.
One, awareness, and 2, also awareness. Start with the board. Yeah. Make them do, let's say, an exercise. It's just make him think of if we are in this situation, and Rex Mundi, I don't know him, but he's nice to use because he already attacked quite some Belgian companies, and not only in Belgium, but also in other countries. If you say, okay, imagine this is us, how will you react? And then have the list of questions and met them. If it's only half a day, they will be glad, and perhaps if there is an incident, they will say, okay, we've been reflecting on this, and it will go faster. And secondly, awareness for all the employees in the company that will protect you from attacks. And it's sometimes better to protect your human capital than to have all these technical measures in place. It's less expensive, and it's for sure quite effective.
Okay, thank you. Alain?
Yeah, I was thinking, so very practical. So I mean, it all depends how large a company is, but do a wargaming exercise. It's very fun. So you take 2 or 3 senior, trustworthy people in your organization, some business, some techie, some network, some application. Sit with them a couple of hours and try to see how you can break your company. That's very simple, I think, to do. It's very eye-opener as well. And the other thing is, look at your logs once. just go on your system and look what you have in your logs, whether that would be of any help the day you are hacked.
Looking in the logs.
The logs of your system, and I can take a bet with you. I can take a bet with you. It would be entirely useless. So it will be an eye-opener as well for more to do.
And if you don't know how to do that, then there's different people walking throughout the floor here that can help you with that. Jaya.
Well, to follow up on what the honorable gentleman before me were saying, I think looking at logs helps, but I think it's about really challenging your assumptions. So if you think something works and looks a particular way, challenge that and see how it really works. If you think you're secure, challenge that. So it's about sanity checking for me, sanity checking and finding your friends. So who are your friends? Who, when the chips are down, are you going to share information with, ask help from, and be able to commit to when you actually need to do something about it? Sanity checking and finding your friends.
Okay, so definitely in the moment that there has been an incident and that you have been hacked or that something happened, at least with a couple of those ideas, you know, if you started with those in the next couple of weeks, then you'll be a little bit more cyber forensic ready. Let me end here by thanking you for attending and for staying and also for the questions. I'm sure that people will still be available. I think that Jaya needs to leave pretty urgently. But for the rest, I'm pretty sure that Alain and Luc will still be available to answer any further questions. Thank you very much also for the organizers for inviting all four of us. And we'll be looking forward for more interesting discussions this afternoon here together with another panel, and then later on in the plenary and in Bart's talk. So thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for assisting me. Thank you. And enjoy your lunch.